Another piece of FBI information, Jonathan, is regarding one of Ali's former bodyguards, Amir, who was murdered in 1965. So before the beating that led to his death, Amir told the FBI that Ali was getting tired of the numerous donations the Nation of Islam expected him to make. And according to one FBI memo, as you reveal in the book, Amir told Ali he was foolish to let the Nation of Islam milk him. Now, remembering that this is in 1965, this is quite big information because it's fairly well known anyway. Into the 1970s, Ali becomes a more rounded person. He isn't this rebel. He isn't as devout, we'll say, to the Nation of Islam, certainly after Elijah Muhammad's death, as he had been in the 1960s. So to hear this coming from Ali in 1965, as early as that, is very, very interesting. And I'm just wondering, is this consistent with anything else, or is it merely this bodyguard who was the sole holder of this information?
Well, there are suggestions that Ali had concerns about the Nation of Islam, that he was afraid that if he ever left, he might be killed the same way Malcolm X was killed after falling into bad way with Elijah Muhammad. So, Ali was a complicated guy. He was incredibly loyal to Elijah Muhammad. He believed that Elijah Muhammad was a prophet of God. He was willing to turn his back on Malcolm X. At a time when maybe he could have saved Malcolm's life, he chose not to. So it's hard to know how much of that was motivated by his true belief in Elijah Muhammad and how much of it was motivated by fear. I mean, a lot of us operate out of fear that God will strike us down if we sin or if we disobey His commandments. And Ali truly believed that Elijah Muhammad was a messenger of God. So these things were really tricky to delineate and to just know exactly what he was thinking. But it was complicated, and he was, he certainly had some doubts and some worries about the Nation of Islam.
Those doubts, right? That seems to be the thing that has carried down through the years across history, that in some ways he was a victim of that arrangement. But what was he getting out of it? What did this man, who clearly wanted to be part of that organization, and yet as early as the mid-60s was resenting the amount of money that he had to give them, what did he feel like he was actually getting from that relationship? Was it simply a pathway to God?
Yeah, I think some of it was that he believed that this was a pathway to God, that this gave him an organizing set of principles in his life, just like a lot of people who find that religion gives them a sense of order, a way to live. The Nation of Islam suggested a way to live that, if you didn't have to rely on the white man to make the rules. You didn't have to wait for the white man to give you a fair shot in this country, that you could fight for your own way of doing things. And eventually the Nation of Islam said that God would grant black people their own nation, like, they would have their land to themselves, and they wouldn't have to be a part of white society anymore. So I think that a big part of it was that it gave him a set of operating principles in life. And it also, gave him this identity of the rebel. It said, he could be an outsider. He didn't have to be what people wanted him to be. He didn't have to be, another Joe Louis who just followed the rules. He saw in this a chance to rebel.
And does he use that? Like, is that a calculation on his part, or is it just is it a more emotive thing?
I think it's emotive. I don't think he's doing it in some way to boost his career or to make himself more famous. I think he believes that this is a way to make sense of life. And, he struggles because he wants to be famous, but he also wants to, punch white society in the face and say, I don't have to live the way you tell me to live anymore. So the Nation of Islam gives him a way to do that.
At the same time as that, though, Jonathan, you kind of very well illustrated in the book that he also wanted to be very, very famous, and with that comes acceptance. And I think there's a point in his career, as I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier on, that he realises that being a little bit more kind to white society is what he needs to be if he wants to be as famous as he desires. And that point does arrive, and it's then we see this conflict between the guy who wants to rebel and the guy who wants to be extremely famous.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when he comes back after his exile from boxing in the 1970s, he seems to just want to be a celebrity. He doesn't talk about race very much anymore. He doesn't talk as much about the Nation of Islam. He starts doing television commercials for all kinds of products. He endorses his own line of cologne and linens for the bed and hamburgers. So it's bizarre that a guy who wanted to be this anti-establishment crusader all of a sudden also wants to endorse hamburgers. And that's what makes Ali so fascinating. He wants to be the rebel, he wants to be the thorn in the side, and he wants to be loved. And those things are at war within him.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.